U.S. President Donald Trump delivered a sharp warning to North Korea Wednesday, telling the rogue nation, "Do not underestimate us. And do not try us." In a speech delivered hours after he aborted a visit to the heavily fortified Korean demilitarized zone due to bad weather, Mr. Trump said he had a message for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. "The weapons you are acquiring are not making you safer, they are putting your regime in grave danger," Mr. Trump told an audience of South Korean lawmakers, calling on all nations to join forces to isolate the brutal regime of North Korea. Story continues below. Advertisement: "The world cannot tolerate the menace of a rogue regime that threatens with nuclear devastation," he said. Mr. Trump came to South Korea on Tuesday without his aggressive rhetoric toward Seoul's northern neighbor, suggesting on his first day in Seoul that Pyongyang should come to the table and make a deal to end its nuclear program. At a news conference with South Korean President Moon Jae-in, there were no threats of unleashing fire and fury on North Korea, as Mr. Trump previously warned, nor did the president revive his derisive nickname for Mr. Kim, Little Rocket Man. Instead, Mr. Trump again pushed Pyongyang to abandon its nuclear weapons program, adding that the United States would use military force if needed, but he expressed his strongest inclination yet to deal with rising tensions with Pyongyang through diplomacy. "It makes sense for North Korea to come to the table and make a deal that is good for the people of North Korea and for the world. I do see certain movement." Mr. Moon, who has been eager to solidify a friendship with Mr. Trump, said he hoped the president's visit would be a moment of inflection in the standoff with North Korea and said the two leaders had agreed to resolve the North Korean nuclear issue in peaceful manner. "I know that you have put this issue at the top of your security agenda. So, I hope that your visit to Korea and to the Asia-Pacific region will serve as an opportunity to relieve some of the anxiety that the Korean people have due to North Korea's provocations and also serve as a turning point in resolving the North Korean nuclear issue." Seoul, November 7. Anti-Trump protesters gathered during a rally in the Gangwon area of central Seoul. At JONESAFPGETTY Images Seoul, November 7. Mr. Trump holds a glass during a state dinner with South Korea's President Moon Jae-in at the presidential Blue House. Jim WATSONAFPGETTY Images return to top Tokyo, November 6. Mr. Trump reviews an honor guard during a welcome ceremony with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at Akasaka State Guest House. Koji SASAHARAREUTERS Tokyo, November 6. Mr. Trump and Mr. Abe feed koi fish during a welcoming ceremony. Toru HANAIAFPGETTY Images Kawago, Japan, in November 6. Mr. Trump and Mr. Abe sign golf hats before heading out to golf at Kasumigaseki Country Club. Doug MILLSTHE New York Times, November 56. A golfing bromance in Japan. Mr. Trump began his trip with a bellicose message on North Korea, telling U.S. and Japanese troops at Yokoda Air Base, west of Tokyo, shortly after his arrival that the world is running out of time with Pyongyang. Story continues below. Advertisement: "No dictator, no regime, no nation should ever underestimate American resolve. Every once in a while, in the past, they underestimated us. It was not pleasant for them, was it?" Mr. Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe greeted each other with a handshake at a golf course to be used during the 2020 Olympic Games, changing clothes and heading out to discuss North Korea and trade while playing 9 holes with Hideki Matsuyama, the world's number 3 pro golfer. In an allusion to a Trump campaign slogan, the leaders signed caps that said "Donald and Shinzo make alliance even greater." The leaders extolled their friendly relationship on Twitter afterward. The two men have met face-to-face 6 times since Mr. Trump was elected U.S. president a year ago and had 16 telephone conversations. They've played golf twice, once at Mr. Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, and again on the Japanese trip. Golf continued to figure prominently in Mr. Abe's welcome on Monday, where, ahead of a formal banquet with Mr. Trump, the Japanese leader recalled that his grandfather, then Prime Minister Nobusuke Kishi, and President Dwight D. Eisenhower began the tradition of U.S.-Japan golf diplomacy 60 years ago. When you play golf not just once but 2 times, the person must be your favorite guy. But pleasantries were not the focus of Mr. Trump's Japanese trip. Mr. Abe is a key ally for Mr. Trump in the North Korea standoff. Both are hardliners who want China to take responsibility for resolving the crisis. Mr. Abe is also pushing to remove some of the constraints on military spending in Japan, whose constitution was revised after the Second World War to include a clause renouncing war, and the country spends only about 1% of its GDP on defense. Mr. Trump ended his visit saying that Mr. Abe had agreed to purchase massive amounts of military equipment, as he should, arguing the U.S. makes the best military equipment, by far. Return to top. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un meets scientists and technicians in the field of nuclear weapons research in this undated photo released by North Korea's official news agency on March 9, 2016. KCNAREUTERS. In recent months, North Korea's tests of long-range missiles and more sophisticated nuclear weapons has left the Asia-Pacific region on high alert, and Mr. Trump's fiery rhetoric on the issue, including threats to totally destroy North Korea if provoked, hasn't calmed his allies down. Here's some recommended reading on the crisis so far. Mr. Trump's trip to Seoul brought him closer than ever to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. That's presuming North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was in fact in Pyongyang on Tuesday, which was likely. Seoul is just 200 kilometers from Pyongyang's Kim Il-sung Square in the heart of the North Korean regime. New York City, by comparison, is 330 kilometers from Washington, D.C. Story continues below. Advertisement. In South Korea, Mr. Trump skipped the customary trip to the demilitarized zone separating North and South, a pilgrimage made by every U.S. president except one since Ronald Reagan as a demonstration of solidarity with the South. Return to top. China. In Beijing, Mr. Trump arrives Wednesday for meetings with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The major issues are the standoff with North Korea, China's largest trading partner, China's $347 billion U.S. trade surplus with the United States, which Mr. Trump wants to narrow, and Beijing's military buildup on disputed islands in the South China Sea, which Washington has criticized as provocative to international laws and norms. Vietnam. On Friday, Mr. Trump heads to the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC Forum in Da Nang, Vietnam, where he will call for a free Indo-Pacific trade region. India, curiously, is not an APEC member state. Mr. Trump is also making a state visit to Hanoi, the Vietnamese capital, where he will meet President Tran Dai Quang. Philippines. Mr. Trump's second and final summit of the journey is in Manila, where he arrives November 12 for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations' 50th annual gathering. His host is Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, who is criticized by human rights groups for having killed thousands in extrajudicial violence as part of his anti-drug campaigns. Mr. Trump has professed admiration for the populist leader, describing him as a kindred spirit who could be helpful in settling the North Korea crisis. Return to top with a report from Sean Gordon. More from the Globe and Mail.